There is a specific kind of betrayal that does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself with arguments or accusations, or the dramatic confrontations that you see in movies and recognize immediately as the moment everything changes. It arrives quietly, in a hospital corridor, in a sentence spoken in a lowered voice by people who believe they are not being heard. I was in room 14 of the cardiac care unit at St. Catherine's Medical Center on a Thursday evening in November, when my family made a decision about my life without asking me. I know what they said because my son Marcus was standing 6 feet from that conversation in a hallway he had stepped into to take a phone call, and he heard every word. "If it happens again," my daughter-in-law Patricia said to the attending physician, "we don't want heroic measures. He's 71. He's had a good life. We think it's time to let nature take its course." The doctor asked if there was an advance directive on file. There was not, because I had not given anyone permission to make that decision. My son walked back into room 14 and sat in the chair beside my bed and did not say a single word about what he had just heard. He sat there for 4 hours, holding my hand when I was awake and watching me breathe when I was not. And somewhere in that 4 hours, he made a series of decisions that would change everything. My name is Edward Raymond Calloway. I am 71 years old. I was a civil engineer for 38 years. I have 2 sons, 1 daughter, and a family that I built with everything I had. And on a Thursday evening in November, most of that family decided, in a hospital corridor, that I had lived long enough. Most of that family, not all. Welcome back to Dad's True Revenge. Get comfortable. This one matters. Let me tell you who was standing in that hallway before I tell you what happened next. My name is Edward. But this story, the part that matters most, belongs to my son Marcus. Marcus Edward Calloway, 43 years old. My youngest. He had driven 4 hours from Nashville to St. Catherine's the moment I called him from the emergency room, arriving at 11:15 at night with gas station coffee and the specific focused calm of a person who has decided that panic is not an option. He is an attorney. Family law primarily, though he spent his first 6 years in estate planning, which, as you will see, became relevant. He had sat beside my bed for 3 days. Now let me tell you who else was there. My oldest son, Gerald, 51, successful, a property developer in Atlanta, who had driven up the second day and spent most of his time in the family waiting room on phone calls. Gerald loved me in the way that busy, successful people love their parents. Genuinely, but from a distance, and with the particular impatience of someone who experiences every situation in terms of how quickly it can be resolved. My daughter, Sandra, 48, married to a man named Robert, who worked in finance and who had opinions about everything. Sandra had flown in from Charlotte the morning of the second day. She had cried at my bedside and organized the family's coffee orders and taken charge of communications with the nursing staff in the way she took charge of most things, with great efficiency and a certainty that she knew best. And Patricia. Patricia was Gerald's wife. She was not technically immediate family. She was, however, the person standing closest to the doctor in that corridor. The person who spoke first and longest and with the most authority, in a situation in which she had no authority whatsoever. Marcus told me later that she had been the one to initiate the conversation, that she had approached the attending physician deliberately, not spontaneously, that she had used the phrase, "We've been discussing this as a family," which was either a lie or a meeting Marcus had not been invited to. Either way, he had not been consulted, and he had heard everything. He did not confront Patricia in the hallway. He did not walk back to the waiting room and demand an explanation from Gerald and Sandra. He did not call anyone. He did not make a scene. He sat beside my bed for 4 hours and he thought. Marcus has always been a thinker. Even as a child, he was the one who sat with problems, who did not rush toward reactions, who understood that the first response to almost anything important was almost never the right response. At 2 in the morning, when I was asleep and the cardiac care unit was quiet and the night shift nurses were at their station down the hall, Marcus opened his laptop. He is, as I mentioned, an attorney with 6 years of estate planning experience. He spent 2 hours reviewing my existing documents, the will, the power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, documents I had prepared 14 years ago, with an attorney in Cincinnati who has since retired, and which I had not revisited since. What he found was this. My healthcare proxy, the document that designated who could make medical decisions on my behalf if I was incapacitated, named Gerald and Sandra as joint decision makers, not Marcus. Not because I had excluded him intentionally. Because 14 years ago Marcus had been 29 years old and recently graduated from law school, and I had, in the casual way of a man who does not fully believe he will ever actually need these documents, named my 2 older children, and not thought carefully enough about what I was doing. Marcus sat with that for a long time. Then he closed his laptop, and he looked at me sleeping in that hospital bed, and he made a decision. He was going to fix it. Not by arguing, not by confronting anyone, by doing what he did, carefully, legally, completely. At 7:15 the following morning, before Gerald or Sandra had arrived at the hospital, before Patricia had come in with the coffees she brought every day, as though coffee carrying conferred decision-making authority, Marcus sat beside my bed and waited for me to wake up. I woke at 7:40. He was there, same chair, same focused calm. "Good morning," he said. "You stayed all night," I said. "I did," he said. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to be awake enough to hear it properly." Something in his voice told me this was not a standard morning conversation. I pushed myself up in the bed. "Talk." He told me everything, word for word, exactly as he had heard it. Patricia's voice, the doctor's questions, the phrase "do not revive him again," the phrase "let nature take its course," the phrase "he's had a good life." I lay there and I listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When he finished, the room was very quiet. "Who initiated it?" I said. "Patricia," he said. But Gerald and Sandra were in the waiting room when she walked to the corridor. I don't know if they sent her or if she went on her own. I thought about that. "How long have you known?" I said. "Since last night," he said. "I didn't want to tell you when you were exhausted. I needed you to be able to think clearly." "What are my documents?" He had them on his laptop. He opened it, turned it toward me. I read the healthcare proxy. I saw my own children's names, Gerald and Sandra, in the spaces that mattered most. "What do I need to do?" I said. "First," Marcus said, "you need to understand that you are currently lucid, you are not incapacitated, and you have every legal right to change these documents while you are capable of doing so." He paused. "I can help you do that. But I need to be clear. I'm your son, and if we make changes that affect Gerald and Sandra, I cannot be your attorney in this. I am going to call a colleague of mine in Memphis who does exactly this kind of work, and she can be here by this afternoon." "You already called her," I said. The corner of his mouth moved, just slightly. "I have her number ready to dial." "Call her," I said. Her name was Dr. Christine Adeyemi, JD not MD, though at this point in the story the distinction feels almost irrelevant. She was 52, precise, and arrived at St. Catherine's at 2:15 in the afternoon, carrying a leather briefcase, and the specific authority of someone who had spent 25 years ensuring that people's final wishes were honored rather than overridden. She met with me for 50 minutes in room 14 with the door closed. Marcus waited in the corridor. In those 50 minutes, I did 4 things. I executed a new healthcare proxy. Marcus was named sole decision-maker regarding my medical care. Gerald and Sandra were removed. This was my legal right, my clear decision, made while fully lucid, documented by a licensed attorney and witnessed by 2 nurses who Christine had arranged beforehand. I executed a new durable power of attorney. Marcus was named my agent for financial and legal matters. I signed a formal advance directive, a document specifying exactly what measures I did or did not want taken if I was incapacitated. It was detailed, specific, and left nothing to interpretation or family discussion. And I sent a letter, drafted by Christine, signed by me, to the attending physician and the charge nurse, formally revoking any informal discussions that had occurred with family members regarding my care, and clarifying that going forward, Marcus Edward Calloway was the sole authorized family contact for medical decisions. Christine left at 3:15. Marcus came back into the room. I looked at my son, this person who had driven 4 hours in the night, who had sat for 4 hours saying nothing while he processed what he had heard, who had spent 2 hours reviewing documents at 2 in the morning and called a colleague before 7, who had walked back into my room and told me the truth when telling me was difficult, and remaining silent would have been easier. "Thank you," I said. He sat down in his chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like a man who just made some important decisions," I said. "Good decisions," he said quietly. "Yes," I said. "Good decisions." Gerald arrived at 4 o'clock, Sandra at 4:30. Patricia came with Gerald, carrying the coffees. Marcus met them in the family waiting room. He had asked me if I wanted to be present for this conversation. I had said no. Not because I could not handle it. I am 71 and I have handled a great many things. But because I believed, and still believe, that what needed to be said between Marcus and his siblings was something that needed to happen without me in the room, making it about my reaction rather than their accountability. I do not know the full content of what was said. Marcus has given me the shape of it, and I will give you the shape as I understand it. He told them what he had heard in the corridor, directly, without softening it. The exact words, the name of who had spoken them, the question the doctor had asked, and the answer that had been given. Gerald's first response was that Patricia had been trying to help, that she had been expressing a concern that the family had discussed. Marcus asked when this discussion had occurred. Gerald could not name a time. Sandra said that they had all been worried that watching me in that hospital bed was difficult, that nobody was trying to do anything wrong. Marcus said that he understood they were worried, that he was worried too. That worry was entirely appropriate and did not require anyone to approach a physician about withholding resuscitation for a man who had not consented to that decision. Patricia said that these were difficult conversations that families had to have. Marcus said that they were conversations that families had with the patient, not about him in corridors while he was sleeping. Then he told them about the documents. He did not do it dramatically. He did not produce paperwork or make a speech. He simply told them, clearly and factually, that I had met with an attorney that afternoon, that my healthcare proxy and power of attorney had been updated, and that going forward, all medical and legal decisions connected to my care ran through him. Sandra started crying. Gerald's face went through several things in rapid succession. Patricia said something that Marcus chose not to repeat to me, which tells me it was something he considered beneath response. And then Marcus said one more thing. He said, "Dad is going to be fine. The doctors are optimistic, and he would like to see all of you, including you, Patricia, when you are ready. He loves you. He is not angry. He just needed to make sure that the decisions about his life were his to make." I was discharged from St. Catherine's 11 days after admission. My heart condition was serious but manageable. A combination of medication and a minor procedure that the doctors described as straightforward, which I chose to believe because the alternative was worrying about something I could not control. Marcus drove me home. We stopped at a diner on the highway and ate breakfast at 11 in the morning, eggs and toast and terrible coffee, and the particular comfortable silence of two people who have been through something together and do not need to name it to know what it means. "Your brothers and sisters are going to need time," I said. "I know," he said. "Sandra called me," I said. "Tuesday morning. She was upset." "I know," he said. "She called me too. She said she didn't know Patricia was going to do that." Marcus looked at his coffee. "I believe her," he said after a moment. "That doesn't mean it doesn't need to have consequences." "No," I said. "It doesn't." "Gerald," he said. "Gerald hasn't called," I said. Marcus nodded, the nod of a man who had expected that. "He will," I said. "Gerald needs longer to get there. He always has." "Yeah," Marcus said. "He always has." We finished breakfast. We got back in the car. Marcus drove the rest of the way to my house with one hand on the wheel and the radio on low, an old station playing songs from the 70s that neither of us commented on but both of us listened to. He stayed for a week, cooked every meal, drove me to follow-up appointments, sat on my back porch in the November cold and drank coffee with me in the mornings while the yard did its November thing. Leaves down, branches bare, the particular stripped-back honesty of a landscape that has decided to stop pretending. On the 5th morning, he said, "Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Were you scared in the hospital?" I thought about that honestly. "Of dying," I said. "Not particularly. I've had 71 years. I've built things. I've loved people." I paused. What scared me was the idea of decisions being made about my life by people who hadn't asked me what I wanted. I stopped. That was the thing. Marcus was quiet. "You fixed that," I said. "You fixed it," he said. "I just handed you the pen." I looked at my son. 43 years old, sitting on my back porch in the November cold, drinking bad coffee and telling me the truth the way he always had, the way he had since he was a boy who sat with problems longer than anyone else because he understood, even then, that the right answer was worth the wait. "Yes," I said, "you did." Gerald called 3 weeks later. The call lasted 47 minutes and covered a great deal of ground and ended with something that I will keep between the two of us, because some conversations are private even when the story around them is not. Sandra and I have spoken several times. She came to visit in December, alone, without Robert, and we sat in my kitchen and had the most honest conversation we have had in 20 years. Patricia has not called. That too is information. My advance directive is filed with St. Catherine's, with my primary care physician, and with Marcus's office. It says exactly what I want, and does not say. It leaves nothing to interpretation or family discussion, or the well-meaning but unauthorized decisions of people standing in hospital corridors. I am not angry, I want to say that clearly. Anger is an energy I do not have spare capacity for at 71, and even if I did, I am not sure it would be the right use of it. What I am is clear. Clear about who sat beside my bed through the night. Clear about who drove 4 hours without being asked. Clear about who handed me the pen when the most important documents of my life needed to be rewritten. Some things you cannot take back. A sentence spoken in a hospital corridor is one of them. But the documents that govern your life, those you can always rewrite as long as you are still here and still capable and still the one holding the pen. I am still here. I am still holding the pen. And my son Marcus is the person standing next to me when I use it. If this story stayed with you, Please hit that like button and subscribe to Dad's True Revenge. Every week, real stories about family, loyalty, and the quiet moments that reveal who people really are. Drop a comment. Tell me what you would have done in Marcus's position. And remember, the most important conversations are the ones that happen with someone, not about them. See you next week.